All right, we appear to be live. Though with nobody here, there's no reason to begin immediately. Tonight's live stream is going to be a reading of Robinson Crusoe Chapter 3. I've read chapters 1 and 2 twice out loud now. Do a quick chapter summary here. Chapter 1, Go to Sea. Robinson Crusoe, the youngest of 3 sons. He's expected to inherit little, so his father encourages him to study law. But he wants to go to sea. He decides to board a ship to London. A storm almost sinks the ship, and Robinson sees it as a sign he may have to give up sea travel. Chapter 2, the captain invites Crusoe on a voyage. He buys some trinkets with his family's money, sells them abroad, and sets off on another expedition. His ship is overtaken by pirates off the coast of Africa, and Crusoe is enslaved and assigned to the task of fishing. Wow, I've read chapter 2 twice, and for whatever reason, I don't remember them being captured by the pirates. No, I'm just reading back and got him being sick. We'll see. Can't really trust Spark Notes, can you? Anyone's watching on the replay, I have a variety of beverages to keep me going through the evening. I've got a coffee here, a little green tea lemonade for later, a little carbonated caffeine dark soda, a cola product, if you will. I have some licorice all sorts. It can't be natural coloring. And I have a Wonder Bar. Just going to log into the chat on my second phone here. Looks like we do have someone, unless it's me. Could be me. Might not be. We'll see. Yeah, it might just be me. All right, I'm here in my own chat. Thanks for joining. We're 3 minutes in here. I plan to wait at least 10 minutes, so I'll just keep talking enough that anyone scrolling by knows that something's going on. And good time to ask if the mic is working. That's mute. That's on. Okay. Well, there's at least somebody here, because I can't be both. Well, maybe I could be both people in the room. There's me plus my second phone. Oh, well, if you're just scrolling by, thank you for popping in for a few seconds, enough to light up that extra profile person here. A reading of Robinson Crusoe is in the future. In the current, it's just me sort of warming up, trying to get my voice modulated to a nice bedtime story voice. I've got 18 pages in chapter 3, so based off the first 18 pages, this should take anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour. Took me 45 minutes for the first 18, but upon listening back, I found I preferred listening to myself at 0.8 speed, so just try and slow down to 0.8 speed tonight and cut out the middleman. However, that may be a cheat if you, well, maybe I only have to record them once and just tell people to listen at 0.8 to sleep and regular speed for dramatic reading, but often the dramatic reading is me just trying to read quicker to figure out what's going on because I'm excited by the story. It's not necessarily what you want as a listener. But in any case, that's the way it's going to go. That's the way it's going. We're about 5 minutes into the warm-up pre-show. I'll give it another 5 minutes here. Hope everyone's Thursday evening is going well. If you've got me bedside and you're falling asleep, I hope that you're falling off to a fabulous slumber. Why don't I even try my hand at a little of that ASMR stuff. All right, if you're lying back, get into a comfortable position. Arms at your sides. Take a deep breath in Hold for a count of 4. And out with all the stress of your day. You're going to do it again. 1 deep breath in. Try and count to 8. Hold for 4. And out. This isn't an ASMR channel. I'm just trying to get my voice in tune for my reading, but if you want to put me bedside and fall off to sleep, I plan to go for an hour reading Robinson Crusoe Chapter 3, Captivity and Escape. So while you're lying there relaxed, just put all the stress, everything, just scrunch up your feet, your toes, just make a little fist out of them like you're Bruce Willis trying to walk on glass. Take a nice deep breath, the same cadence as your breaths to let out all that bad energy. And release the feet and just feel all that stress go away. Just feel it all melting from your body. And do the same thing with your calves. Being careful, point your toes down if you want to stretch the calves. If you point your toes up towards you, it's easy to overstretch that ligament. So point your toes away from you. Get a nice good stretch on that calf. Relax. Now we'll go further up the body. Try and tighten your chest, your whole torso, all those muscles in there, your abdomen. Just get them all at once because I'm not really good at this, so I'm trying to cheat my way forward. Try and get through the whole body here. Just hold it all for 8 seconds. And maybe it's 7 seconds and then breathe out for 8. Yeah, try that. See if that's any better. 7-second breath. And I see nobody's typing in chat. Maybe it's because I'm on top messages instead of all messages. Well, here I am on all messages, but nobody's typing. That's fine because this is meant to be a nice bedtime story. So I hope you're not still holding your breath on your torso, but let it all go. I bet that's a stress relief. Get into the shoulders. Everybody holds tension in their shoulders, so just shrug them around a little bit. Just feel all that. Try and rotate it the opposite way, whatever way you were going the first time. Just get all that stress and tension out because you deserve it. It's the end of the night. There's no point in carrying that into tomorrow. And then just tighten up all those muscles and hold it for a count of 7. And then breathe out for a count of 8. Feel everything just tense, all that tension going away. Now I think you probably do the arms, so let's try the same thing on the arms. And you can breathe in for 8 while you're holding it tense. Hold it for 4. Breathe in for 7, hold it tense. Hold it tense for 4, then breathe out for 8. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and hold. 2, 3, 4. Release. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, one last one. We'll do the head. We're sitting here at 9 minutes into the feed. You guys should all be nice and relaxed now. Just scrunch up your head. Feel like you've got the worst migraine ever. Just scrunch all those muscles together in your face, all those frown muscles. And hold it, and hold it, and hold it. And let it go. Just let it go. Feel it all passing over you. And we're just about done here. We're almost 10 minutes into the pre-show. I'm feeling relaxed. I think I'll be able to read a very cadenced, slow, methodical captivity and escape chapter. Be pausing every 3 to 4 pages, digest what we've read. If there's questions or observations in the chat, I may read those. If you still got me bedside, by all means, don't feel the need to pick up the phone if you're going to fall asleep. Listen to the replay, put it in the comments. All right, well, I see well, if there's two of you here, that means one of you is me. I'm going to say a quick hello to let myself know the chat is working. And here we go. I hope the mic is good. I was now set up for a guinea trader, and my friend, to my great misfortune, dying soon after his arrival. I had resolved to go to the same voyage again, and I embarked in the same vessel with one who was his mate in the former voyage, and had now got the command of the ship. This was the unhappiest voyage that ever man made. For though I did not carry quite 100 pounds of my new gained wealth, so that I had 200 pounds left, and which I'd lodged with my friend's widow, who was very just to me, yet I fell into terrible misfortunes in this voyage, and the first was this, namely our ship, making her course toward the Canary Island, or rather between those islands and the African shore, was surprised in the grey of morning by a Turkish rover of Sallee, who gave chase to us with all the sail she could make. We crowded also, as to us, with all the sail she could make. We crowded also as much canvas as our yards would spread, our masts carry, to have got clear, but finding the pirate gained upon us, and would certainly come up with us in a few hours, we prepared to fight. Our ship having 12 guns, and the rogue 18. About 3 in the afternoon he came up with us, and bringing to by mistake just athwart our quarter, instead of athwart our stern as he intended, we brought 8 of our guns to bear on that side, and poured in a broadside upon him, which made him sheer off again after returning our fire, and pouring in also his small shot from near 200 men which he had on board. However, we had not a man touched, all our men keeping close. He prepared to attack us again, and we to defend ourselves, but lying us on board the next time upon our other quarter, he entered 60 men upon our deck, who immediately fell to the cutting and hacking the decks and rigging. We plied them with small shot, half pikes, powder chests, and such like, and cleared our deck of them twice. However, to cut short this melancholy part of our story, our ship being disabled, and 3 of our men killed, and 8 wounded, we were obliged to yield, and we carried all prisoners into, and were carried all prisoners into Sallee, a port belonging to the Moors. The usage I had there was not so dreadful as at first I apprehended. That's a pause for Lola the dog to scratch her collar. Hello, Lola. Nothing to say, just a quick hello, I'm here, eh? Okay. The usage I had there was not so dreadful as at first I apprehended, nor was I carried up the country to the emperor's court as the rest of our men were, but was kept by the captain of the rover as his proper prize, and made his slave. Being young and nimble, and fit for his business, At the surprising change of my circumstances, from a merchant to a miserable slave, I was perfectly overwhelmed. And now I look back upon my father's prophetic discourse to me, that I should be miserable and have none to relieve me, which I thought was now so effectually brought to pass that I could not be worse. And now the hand of heaven had overtaken me, and I was undone without redemption. But alas, this was but a taste of the misery I was to go through, as will appear in the sequel of this story. As my new patron or master had taken me home to his house, so I was in hopes that he would take me with him when he went to sea again, believing it would be some time or other be his fate to be taken by a Spanish or Portuguese man-o'-war, and that I should be set at liberty. But this hope of mine was soon taken away, for when he went to sea, he left me on shore to look after his little garden, to do the common drudgery of slaves about his house. And when he came home again from his cruise, he ordered me to lie in the cabin to look after the ship. Here I mediated nothing but my escape and what method I might take to effect it, but found no way that had the least probability in it. Nothing presented to make the supposition of it rational, for I had nobody to communicate it with that would embark with me, no fellow slave, no Englishman, Irishman, or Scotsman, there but myself, so that for 2 years, though I often pleased myself with the imagination, yet I never had the least encouraging prospect of putting it into practice. I'm going to take a quick break here just to have a sip to drink. Turn the mic on mute. There is something delightfully absurd about broadcasting to nobody. But when I started this, I knew I was doing this for myself, and there would be people who are interested. Chances of me connecting with them at the exact time I decide to read is as unlikely as Robinson Crusoe's chances of escape at this point of the novel. So I see parallels here. We're just 2.5 pages into the read. I see that's taken me 10 minutes, so at this pace, 10 minutes, 2 pages, 10. Yeah, I think I'm on pace for just over an hour. We'll get started again in about 20-30 seconds here. Just taking a quick break. I see somebody's joined, so welcome. Oh, somebody's left. Well, goodbye. No, it's a bit of a pause too, so regardless, Chapter 3, the kidnapping has taken place. Robinson Crusoe is a slave. He's planning his escape, but things don't look good. All right, beginning in 10 seconds here. After about 2 years, an odd circumstance presented itself, which put the odd thought of making some attempt for my liberty again in my head. My patron, lying at home longer than usual, without fitting out his ship, which, as I heard, was for want of money, he used constantly, once or twice a week, sometimes oftener. If the weather was fair, to take the ship's pinnace and go out into the road a fishing, as he always took me and a young Moresco with him to row the boat. We made him very merry, and I proved very dexterous in catching fish, insomuch that sometimes he would send me with a Moor, one of his kinsmen, and the youth, the Moresco as they called them, to catch a dish of fish for them. It happened one time that going a fishing in the stark calm morning, a fog rose so thick, though we were not half a league from the shore, we lost sight of it. And rowing we knew not whither or which way, we labored all day, and all the next night. And when the morning came, we found we had pulled off to sea instead of pulling in for shore, and that we were at least 2 leagues from the shore. However, we got well in again, though with a great deal of labor and some danger, for the wind began to blow pretty fresh in the morning, but particularly we were all very hungry. But our patron, warned by this disaster, resolved to take more care of himself for the future, and having lying by him the longboat of our English ship he had taken, he resolved he would not go a-fishing any more without a compass and some provision. So he ordered the carpenter of his ship, who was also an English slave, to build a small stateroom or cabin in the middle of the longboat, like that of a barge, with a place to stand behind it to steer and hail home the main sheet, and a room before for a hand or two to stand in and work the sails. She sailed with what we call a shoulder of mutton sail, and the boom jibbed over the top of the cabin, which lay very smug and low, and had in it room for him to lie, with a slave or two, and a table to eat on, with some small lockets to put in some bottles of such liquor as he thought fit to drink, particularly his bread, rice, and coffee. We went frequently out with his boat a-fishing, and as I was most dexterous to catch fish for him, he never went without me. It happened that he had appointed to go out in his boat, either for pleasure or for fish, with 2 or 3 Moors of some distinction in that place, for whom he had provided extraordinarily, and therefore sent on board the boat overnight a larger store of provisions than ordinary, and had ordered me to get ready with 3 fuses and powder and shot, which were on board his ship, for that they designed some sport of fowling as well as fishing. I got all things ready as he directed, and waited the next morning with the boat washed clean, her flag, pendants out, and everything to accommodate his guests. When by and by my patron came aboard alone, and told me his guests had put off going, upon some business fell out, and ordered me with the man and boy as usual to go out with a boat and catch them some fish, for that his friends were to sup at his home, and commanded that as soon as I got some fish, I should bring it home to the house, all which I prepared to do. This moment, my former notions of deliverance darted into my thoughts, for now I found I was like to have a little ship at my command. With my master being gone, I prepared to furnish myself, not for a fishing business, but for a voyage. though I knew not, neither did I so much as consider whither I would steer, for anywhere to get out of that place was my way. My my first contrivance was to make a pretense to speak to this Moor, to get something for our subsistence on board. For I told him we must not presume to eat our patron's bread. He said that was true, so he brought a large basket of rusk or biscuit of their kind, and 3 jars with fresh water into the boat. I knew where my patron's case of bottles stood, which was evident by the make, were taken out of some English prize. And I conveyed them into the boat while the Moor was on shore, as if they had been there before for a master. I conveyed also a great lump of beeswax into the boat, which weighed above half a hundredweight, with a parcel of twine or thread, or hatchet, a saw and hammer, all which were great use to us afterwards, especially the wax to make candles. Another trick I tried upon him, which he innocently came into also. His name was Ismail, who they call Mooley or Moley. So I called to him. "Moley," said I, "our patron's guns are on board the boat. Can you not get a little powder and shot? It may be we may kill some alchemies," which is a fowl like our curlews, "for ourselves. For I know he keeps the gunner's stores in the ship." "Yes," said he, "I'll bring some." And accordingly he brought a great leather pouch, which held about 1.5 pounds of powder, or rather more. And another was shot, that he had 5 or 6 pounds. And with bullets, and put that all into the boat. At the same time I had found some powder of my master's in the great cabin, with which I filled one of the large bottles in the case, which was almost empty, pouring what was in it into another, and thus furnished with everything needful, we sailed out of the port to fish. The castle, which at the entrance of the port knew who we were, and took no notice of us. And we were not above 1 mile out of the port before we hauled in our sail and set down to fish. The wind blew from the north-northeast, which was contrary to my desire, for had it blown southerly, I had been sure to have made the coast of Spain, or at least reached the Bay of Cadiz. But my resolutions were, blow which way it would, I would be gone from that horrid place where I was, and leave the rest to fate. After we had fished for some time, and caught nothing, for when I had fish on my hook, I would not pull them up, that he might not see them, I said to the Moor, "This will not do. Our master will not be thus served. We must stand farther off." He, thinking no harm, agreed, and being in the head of the boat, set the sails. And as I had the helm, I run the boat out near 1 league farther, and then brought her as if I would fish. When giving the boy the helm, I stepped forward to where the Moor was, and making as if I stooped for something behind him, I took him by surprise, with my arm under his legs, and tossed him clear overboard into the sea. He rose immediately, for he swam like a cork, and calling to me, he begged to be taken in, told me he would go all over the world with me. He swam so strong after the boat that he would have reached me very quickly, there being but little wind, upon which I stepped into the cabin, and fetching one of the fowling pieces, I presented it at him, and told him I had done him no hurt, but if he would be quiet, I would do him none. But, said I, you can swim well enough to reach the shore, and the sea is calm. Make the best of your way to shore. I will do you no harm. But if you come near the boat, I'll shoot you through the head, for I am resolved to have my liberty. So he turned himself about and swam for the shore. I make no doubt that he reached it with ease, for he was an excellent swimmer. I could have been content to take him this moor with me and drown the boy, but there was no venturing to trust him. When he was gone, I turned to the boy, whom they called Ch3, and said to him, Ch3, if you will be faithful to me, I will make you a great man. But if you will not stroke your face to be true to me, that is, swear by Mahomet and his father's beard, I must throw you into the sea too. The boy smiled in my face and spoke so innocently that I could not mistrust him, and swore to be faithful to me and go all over the world with me. While I was in the view of the moor that was swimming, I stood directly to the sea with the boat, rather stretching to windward, that they might think me gone towards the strait's mouth, as indeed anyone that had been in their wits must have been supposed to do. For who would have supposed we were sailed on to the southward, to the truly barbarian coast, where whole nations of Negroes were sure to surround us with their canoes? Welcome to the first chatter. I say hi to defeat. Yeah, I may be defeated, or maybe not Robinson Crusoe, but welcome, Patrolman. Just doing a read of Chapter 3 of Robinson Crusoe. I'll take a quick break to have a sip of my coffee. Not intended to be a perfect read. I'm experiencing the story for the first time, but just trying to spread my wings a little bit and practice reading live. So thank you for joining the chat, and we'll get right back to where I was. But as soon as it grew dusk in the evening, I changed my course and steered directly south and by east, bending my course a little toward the east, that I might keep with the shore, and having a fair fresh gale of wind and a smooth quiet sea, I made such sail that I believe that the next day at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, when I first made land, that I could be not less than 150 miles south of Salé, quite beyond the Emperor of Morocco's dominions, or indeed any other king thereabouts, for we saw no people. Yet such was fright that I had taken at the Moors, and the dreadful apprehensions I had of falling into their hands, that I would not stop, or go on shore, or come to anchor. The wind continuing fair till I had sailed in that manner for 5 days, and the wind shifting to the southward, I concluded that if any of our vessels were in chase of me, that they would now give over. So I ventured make the coast, and came to anchor in the mouth of a little river, I knew not what or where, neither the latitude, what country, what nation, or what river. I neither saw nor desired to see any people. The principal thing I wanted was fresh water. We came into this creek in the evening, resolving to swim on shore as soon as it was dark, and discover the country. But as soon as it was quite dark, we heard such dreadful noises of the barking, roaring, and howling of wild creatures, of we knew not what kinds, that the poor boy was ready to die with fear, and begged of me that we not go on shore till day. Well, Ch3, said I, then I won't, but it may be We may see men by day who will be as bad to us as those lions. Then we give them the shoot gun, said Ch3, laughing. Make them run away. Such English Ch3 spoke by conversing amongst us slaves. However, I was glad to see the boys so cheerful, and I gave them a dram out of our patron's case of bottles to cheer them up. After all, Ch3's advice was good, and I took it. We dropped our little anchor and we lay still all night. I say still, for we slept none. For in 2 or 3 hours we saw vast great creatures. We knew not what to call them, of many sorts, come down to the seashore and run into the water, wallowing and washing themselves for the pleasure of cooling themselves. And they made such hideous howlings and yellings that I had never indeed heard the like. Ch3 was dreadfully frightened, and indeed so was I too. But we were both more frightened when we heard one of those mighty creatures come swimming towards our boat. We could not see him, but we might hear him by his blowing to a monstrous and huge, furious beast. Ch3 said it was a lion, and it might be for aught I know. But poor Ch3 cried to me to weigh the anchor and row away. No, said I. Ch3, we can slip our cable with a buoy to it and go off to sea. They cannot follow us far. I had no sooner said so, but I perceived the creature, whatever it was, within 2 oars' length, which something surprised me. However, I immediately stepped to the cabin door and, taking up my gun, fired at him, upon which he immediately turned about and swam toward the shore again. But it is impossible to describe the horrible noises, hideous cries and howlings that were raised, as well as upon the edge of the shore as higher within the country. Upon the noise or report of the gun, a thing I have for some reason to believe those creatures had never heard before. This convinced me that there was no going on shore for us in the night upon that coast. And how to venture on the shore in the day was another question too. For to have fallen in the hand of any savages had been as bad to have fallen into the hands of lions and tigers. At least we were equally apprehensive of the danger of it. We take a quick beverage break. We're at page 28. We'll be going to page 37, I believe. Really just page 36, so 8 more pages left in this read. Probably be done in an hour 10. Take a 3-minute break here. If you're just joining, I've got about 8 pages left of the Robinson Crusoe read. At this point, he is midway through his escape. At the beginning of the chapter, he was captured by pirates, lived life as a slave, I think for a couple of years. Might have to go back and reread that to know the exact passage of time. It wasn't quick that he escaped, but this is his escape now. We've got about 25 more minutes to read. If you want to listen to an escape story for your bedtime read, by all means, put the phone down and have a listen. Excuse me, I'm just taking a quick break to get my voice back. Okay, we'll get started in about 20 seconds here. All right, we're back. They just finished firing at some sort of unknown creatures that were swimming towards the boat. They've resolved that they're not going ashore until the daylight. They're as scared of the savages that may be on shore as they are by the savage animals they encountered in the evenings. Here we go. But that as it would, we were obliged to go on shore somewhere or other for water, for we had not a pint left in the boat. When or where to get it was the point. Ch3 said if I would let him go on shore with one of the jars, he would find it if there was any water, and bring some to me. I asked him why would he go, why I should not go, and he stay in the boat. The boy answered with so much affection that it made me love him ever after. He said, if wild mans come, they eat me, you go away. Well, Ch3, said I, we will both go. And if the wild mans come, we will kill them. They shall eat neither of us. So I gave Ch3 a piece of rusk bread to eat, and a dram out of our patron's case of bottles, which I'd mentioned before. And we hauled out the boat in as near the shore as we thought was proper, and waded on shore carrying nothing but our guns and 2 jars for water. I did not care to go out of sight of the boat, fearing the coming of canoes with savages down the river. But the boy, seeing a low place about a mile up the country, rambled to it, and by I saw him coming running towards me. I thought he was pursued by some savage or frightened with some wild beast. I ran forward towards him to help him, but when I came nearer to him, I saw something hanging over his shoulders, which was a creature that he had shot, like a hare, very different in color, and had longer legs. However, we were very glad of it, and it was with very good meat. But the great joy that poor Ch3 came with was to tell me he had found good water and seen no wild mans. But we found after that we need not take such pains for water, for a little higher up the creek was where we found the water fresh when the tide was out, which flowed but a little way up. So we filled our jars, feasted on the hare we had killed, and prepared to go on our way, having seen no footsteps of any human creature in that part of the country. As I had been on one voyage to this coast before, I knew very well that the islands of the Canaries and the Cape de Verde Islands also lay not far off from the coast. But as I had no instruments to take an observation to know what latitude we were in, and did not exactly know, or at least remember, what latitude they were in, I knew not where to look for them, or when to stand off to sea towards them. Otherwise I might now have found some of these islands. But my hope was that, if I stood along this coast till I came upon the part where the English vessels traded, I should find some of their vessels upon their usual design of trade that would relieve and take us in. By the best of my calculation, that place where I now was must be that country which, lying between the Emperor of Morocco's dominions and the Negroes, lies waste and uninhabited, except by wild beasts. The Negroes having abandoned it and gone further south for the fear of the Moors, and the Moors not thinking it worth inhabiting by reason of its barrenness. Indeed, both forsaking it because of the prodigious number of tigers, lions, leopards, and other furious creatures which harbor there, so that the Moors use it for their hunting only, where they go like an army, 2,000 or 3,000 men at a time. And indeed, for near 100 miles together upon this coast, we saw nothing but a waste inhabited country by day, and heard nothing but howlings and roaring of wild beasts by night. Once or twice in the daytime, I thought I saw the peak of Tenerife, being the high top of the mountain Tenerife of the Canaries. I had a great mind to venture out in the hopes of reaching thither, but having tried twice, I was forced in again by contrary winds, the sea also going too high for my little vessel. So I resolved to pursue my first design and keep going along the shore. Several times I was obliged to land for fresh excuse me. Well, hello, Samantha. Thank you for saying hi. That gives me a reason to take a quick break, get my voice back after running. We are on page 31 of 37 pages that'll be read tonight. I've read the previous 2 chapters, so this is the end of chapter 3, Robinson Crusoe. He is sailing away. And based off the size of this novel, this isn't one that I read in school, but for the adventures he's already had from the beginning to chapter 3, what is there, 300 pages, 275 pages. There's a lot more to come. I know very little about the novel aside from how it's been brought up in popular culture, so it's very cool to me to be experiencing it the first time. Very glad that they used Negroes instead of other words to describe the people in Africa. That would have been awkward. In any case, let's see, 47 minutes into the stream. Let's give it 25 seconds and I will return. Let me make sure I'm at my spot. Okay. And the situation here is he's escaping, but they need fresh water, so they have to constantly keep hitting shores to get water because they only have a short voyage's worth, and he has no idea where he is at this point. Even though he's sailed seas before, he was never an expert. All right. Looks like we're ready to go. Several times I was obliged to land for fresh water after we had left this place, and once in particular, being early in the morning, we came to an anchor under a little point of land which was pretty high, and the tide beginning to flow, we lay still to go farther in. Ch3, whose eyes were more about him than it seems mine were, called softly to me, and told me we had best go farther off the shore. For, said he, look, yonder lies a dreadful monster on the side of that hillock fast asleep. I looked where he had pointed, and saw a dreadful monster indeed, for it was a terrible great lion that lay on the side of the shore, under the shade of a piece of the hill that hung as if it were a little over him. Ch3, said I, you shall go on the shore and kill him. Ch3 looked frightened, and said, me kill? He eat me at one mouth. One mouthful, he meant. However, I said no more to the boy, but bade him lie still, and took our biggest gun, which was almost musket bore, and loaded it with a good charge of powder, and with 2 slugs, and laid it down. Then I loaded another gun with 2 bullets, and the third, for we had 3 pieces, and I loaded with 5 smaller bullets. I took the best aim I could with the first piece, to have him shot into the head, but he lay so with his leg raised a little above his nose, that the slugs hit his leg about the knee and broke the bone. He started growling at first, but finding his leg broke, he fell down again, and then got up upon 3 legs and gave the most hideous roar I had ever heard. I was a little surprised that I had not hit him on the head. However, I took up the second piece immediately, and though he began to move off, fired again, and shot him into the head, and had the pleasure of seeing him drop, and make but little noise, but lay struggling for life. Then Ch3 took heart, and would have me let him go on shore. Well, go, said I. So the boy jumped into the water, taking a little gun in one hand. He swam to the shore with the other hand, and coming close to the creature, put the muzzle of the piece to his ear, and shot him into the head, which dispatched him quite. This was game indeed to us, but this was no food, and I was very sorry to lose 3 charges of powder and shot upon a creature that was good for nothing to us. However, Ch3 said he would have some of him, for he comes on board and asked me to give him a hatchet. For what, Ch3? said I. Me cut off his head, said he. However, Ch3 could not cut off his head, but he cut off a foot and brought it with him, and it was a monstrous great one. I bethought myself, however, perhaps the skin of him might one way or another be of some value to us, so I resolved to take off his skin, if I could. So Ch3 and I went to work with him, but Ch3 was the much better workman at it, for I knew very ill how to do it. Indeed, it took us up both the whole day, but at last we got the hide off him, and spreading it atop our cabin, the sun effectively dried it in 2 days' time, and afterward it served me to lie upon. After this stop, we made to the southward, continually for 10 or 12 days, living very sparing on our provisions, which began to abate very much, and going no oftener into the shore as we were obliged for fresh water. My design in this was to make the river Gambia, or Senegal. That is to say, anywhere about the Cape de Verde, where I was in the hopes to meet with some European ship, and if I did not, I knew not what course I had to take, but to seek for the islands, or perish there amongst the Negroes. I knew that all the ships from Europe which had sailed either to the coast of Guinea or to Brazil, or to the East Indies, made this cape, or those islands, and in a word, I put my whole fortune upon this single point, either that I must meet with some ship, or must perish. When I had pursued this resolution about 10 days longer, as I have said, I began to see that land was inhabited in 2 or 3 places as we sailed by. We saw people stand upon the shore to look at us. We could also perceive they were quite black and stark naked. I was once inclined to have gone on shore to them, but Ch3 was my better counselor. He said to me, no go, no go. However, I hauled in nearer the shore that I might talk to them, and found they ran along the shore by me a good way. I observed they had no weapons in their hands except one, who had a long, slender stick, which Ch3 said was a lance, and that they would throw them a great way with good aim. So I kept my distance. But I talked with them, by signs as well as I could, particularly made signs for something to eat. They beckoned to me to stop my boat, and they would fetch me some meat. Upon this I lowered my top of my sail, and lay by, and 2 of them ran up into the country. In less than half an hour came back and brought with them 2 pieces of dry flesh and some corn, as is the produce of their country. But we neither knew what one nor the other was. However, we were willing to accept it. But how to come at it was our next dispute, for I was not venturing on shore to them, and they were very much as afraid of us. But they took a safe way for us all. They brought it down to shore and laid it down, and then went and stood a good way off until we fetched it on board, and then came close to us again. We made signs of thanks to them, for we had nothing to make them amends. But an opportunity offered that very instant to oblige them wonderfully. For while we were lying by the shore came two mighty creatures, one pursuing the other, as we took it, with great fury, from the mountains toward the sea. Whether it was the male pursuing the female, whether they were in sport or in rage, we could not tell, any more than we could tell whether it was the usual or strange. But I believe it was the latter, because, in the first place, those ravenous creatures seldom appear but in the night. And in the second place, we found the people terribly frightened, especially the women. The man that had the lance, or dart, did not fly from them, but the rest did. However, as the two creatures ran directly into the water, they did not seem to offer to fall upon any of the Negroes, but plunged themselves into the sea, and swam about as if they had come for their diversion. At least one of them came nearer our boat than at first I expected, but I lay ready for him, for I had loaded my gun with all possible expedition, and bade Jury load both the others. As soon as he came fairly within my reach, I fired and shot him directly into the head. Immediately he sank down into the water, but rose instantly and plunged up and down as if he was struggling for life. And so indeed he was. He immediately made it to shore, but between the wound, which was his mortal hurt, and the strangling of the water, he died just before he was to reach the shore. It is impossible to express the astonishment of these poor creatures at the noise and fire of my gun. Some of them were even ready to die for fear, and fell down as dead with the very terror. But when they saw the creature dead and sunk in the water, and that I had made signs to them to come to the shore, they took heart and came to the shore and began to search for the creature. I found him by his blood staining the water, and by the help of a rope which I slung round him and gave the Negroes to haul, they dragged him on shore, and found that it was a most curious leopard, spotted and fine to an admirable degree. And the Negroes held up their hands with admiration to think what it was I had killed it with. Held up their hands with admiration to think what it was that I had killed him with. The other creature, frightened with the flash of good alliteration for the first novel ever. Take a quick break. We're on page 34. We have 3 more pages. This might be the last break before we're done. Just about an hour into it. All right, in 5 seconds. The other creature, frightened with the flash of fire and the noise of the gun, swam on the shore and ran up directly to the mountains from whence they came. Nor could I at that distance know what it was. I found quickly the Negroes were for eating the flesh of this creature, so I was willing to have them take it as a favor from me, which, when I made signs to them that they might take him, they were very thankful for. Immediately they fell to work with him, and though they had no knife, yet with a sharpened piece of wood, they took off his skin as readily, and much more readily, than we could have done with a knife. They offered me some of the flesh, which I declined, making as if I would give it to them, but made signs for the skin, which they gave me very freely, and brought me a great deal more of their provision, which, though I did not understand, yet I accepted. Then I made signs to them for some water and held out one of my jars, turning it bottom upward to show it was empty and that I wanted to have it filled. They called immediately to some of their friends, and there came 2 women, and they brought a great vessel made of earth and burnt, as I suppose, in the sun. They set this down for me as before, and I sent Ch3 on shore with my jars and filled them all 3. I was now furnished with roots and corn, such as it was, and water, and leaving my friendly negroes, I made forward for 11 days more, without offering to go near the shore, till I saw the land run out a great length into the sea. At about the distance of 4 or 5 leagues before me, and the sea being very calm, I kept a large offing to make this point. At length, doubling the point at about 2 leagues from the land, I saw plainly land on the other side, seaward. Then I concluded, as it was most certain indeed that this was the Cape de Verde, and the islands called from thence Cape de Verde Islands. However, they were at a great distance, and I could not tell what I'd best do, for if I should be taken with a fresh wind, I might neither reach one nor the other. In this dilemma I was very pensive. I stepped into the cabin and set me down, Ch3 having the helm, when on a sudden the boy called out, "Master, master, a ship with sail!" And the foolish boy was frightened out of his wits, thinking it must be needs or some of his master's ships sent to pursue us, when I knew we were gotten far enough out of their reach. I jumped out of the cabin and immediately saw not only the ship, but that it was a Portuguese ship, and as I thought was bound for the coast of Guinea for negroes. But when I observed the course she steered, I was soon convinced they were bound some other way, and I did not design come any nearer the shore, upon which I stretched out to sea as much as I could, resolving to speak with them if possible. With all the sail I could make, I found I should not be able to come their way, but they would be gone before I could signal them. But after I crowded to the utmost and began to despair, they, it seems, saw me by the help of their perspective glasses, and that it must be some European boat which, as they supposed, must belong to some ship that was lost. So they shortened sail to let me come up. I was encouraged with this, and as I had my patron's flag on board, I made a waft of it to them as a signal of distress, and fired a gun, both of which they saw, for they told me they saw the smoke, though they did not hear the gun. Upon these signals they very kindly brought to, and lay by for me. In about 3 hours' time, I came up with them. They asked me what I was in Portuguese and in Spanish and in French, but I understood none of them. But at last the Scottish sailor who was on board called to me, and I answered and told him I was an Englishman, and that I had made my escape out of slavery from the Moors at Sally. They bade me come on board, and very kindly took me in, and all my goods. It was inexpressible joy to me that anyone would believe that I was thus delivered, as I esteemed it, from such a miserable and almost hopeless condition as I was in, and I immediately offered all I had to the captain of the ship as a return for my deliverance. But he generously told me he would take nothing from me, that all I had should be delivered safe to me when I came to the Brazils. For, said he, I have saved your life on no other terms than I would be glad to have saved myself. It may be one time or other be my lot to be taken up in the same condition. Besides, said he, when I carry you to the Brazils, so great away from your own country, if I should take away from you what you have, you will be starved there. Then I only take away that life I have given. No, no, senor, Mr. Englishman, I will carry you thither in charity, And those things will help you buy your substance there and your passage home again. That's the end of chapter 3. Chapter 4 is a plantation in Brazil, which I imagine is the next destination for Mr. Crusoe. I hope you're enjoying this read. I'm enjoying reading it. See, there's somebody else in the room. Perhaps you've gone to bed, so I'll just, oh, you've disappeared. I know if there's only one person, it's me on my own phone. So we will wrap this up. Thank you very much for joining me, especially if you're here on the replay. If you have any public domain materials you would like to hear read, especially shorter ones. Short ones I can get to fast and maybe even do them as shorts if they're under 3 minutes. So if you have something in the public domain that you would like to hear read, by all means, put it in the comments. Thanks again, and this is the end of the stream.